Aloha and welcome to our video on the stages of cellular respiration. The goals for the video are to describe the activity of glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and finally the electron transport chain. Okay, so let's quickly get an overview of respiration. What we're talking about is taking this glucose molecule and some oxygen, and we're going to break this glucose down into carbon dioxide and water, and that's going to yield us energy that we're going to store for the cells to use in the form of ATP. So here's our model of cellular respiration. Okay, here we have our glucose. The first thing the glucose is going to go through is this process called glycolysis. In glycolysis, it will produce a little bit of ATP, but it also converts the glucose into pyruvic acid. That then enters into the mitochondria, and it'll go through the Krebs cycle and generate a little more ATP and also the carbon dioxide waste product that we see. But then it also goes through what we call the electron transport chain, and that's going to make the bulk of the ATP here. So let's break down these stages, and we'll take a look at them one at a time and see what's going on in each stage. Okay, so the first stage of cellular respiration is glycolysis. And glycolysis happens out in the cytoplasm. And what you'll notice is we start off with our glucose here, and we're going to add some ATP energy. This ATP will break, and when it does so, it'll allow us to break this 6-carbon molecule of glucose into 2 3-carbon molecules. Then we'll take off a little bit of the electrons here, and we'll form NADH, and that's going to be used later on in cellular respiration. We also generate a little bit of ATP, but then we're going to end up with 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, and notice that those are both 3-carbon structures. So in glycolysis, what we're doing is we're taking glucose and we are breaking it down to form pyruvic acid, and then we get a little bit of ATP and then these electron carriers that we'll meet in the third stage. Okay, so let's explore the second stage of cellular respiration, and this is what we call the Krebs cycle. Now, if you notice down here, our Krebs cycle occurs in the mitochondria, and that happens in the matrix of it, or the fluid portion of the mitochondria. What we're going to do is we're going to take this pyruvic acid that we got from glycolysis. So remember, glycolysis broke down glucose to make this pyruvic acid. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cleave off a carbon dioxide, and that's going to make acetic acid. Now, acetic acid enters into the Krebs cycle, and it'll join with a 4-carbon structure to make a 6-carbon molecule. As this 6-carbon molecule proceeds through the Krebs cycle, we're going to break off some more CO2, okay, which will generate ATP and then also gives us some more of these electron carriers. Now, if I take this 6-carbon up here and I break off 2 carbon dioxides, then I end up with my 4-carbon that we started off with. Okay, so you can see how this is going to be a cycle. It'll be ready to accept more acetic acid, and that's how the process begins. Now, notice that we are generating this carbon dioxide, and this is the waste product that we have to get rid of. So this carbon dioxide gets into our blood system, works our way to our lungs, and that's what we exhale out. Okay, so we took the pyruvic acid from glycolysis, and we made some ATP. We got a couple more of these electron carriers, and we've started to create some waste products of carbon dioxide. The third and final stage is the electron transport chain. And this one here occurs in the membrane, okay, of our mitochondria. All right. Now what we notice is that electrons are going to come into here, our electron carriers. So we'll see these electrons here. So all of the electrons we've been storing up as NADH and things, those come here and the electrons go into this. And this is our electron transport chain. These electrons are going to migrate down as they go this way. Okay? And as they're going down this way, what they're going to do is take this hydrogen and they're going to pump hydrogen inside to the inner membrane space. Okay, so from the matrix, the fluid part, they're going to pump it into the membranes. All right, so we're pumping in those hydrogens. Now these electrons that are moving across, as you see through here, through this chain, they lose energy every step of the way. And as they lose energy, what they allow to happen is oxygen will come in here and it can bond and form water. Now normally if you take hydrogen and oxygen and you add it together, it's explosive, But because these electrons have been moving down the chain, this reaction is a lot slower, it's a lot more stable, it doesn't explode, and it's able to happen in the cells without any issues. Okay, now the last part is, after we've pumped in all of these hydrogens, all right, all of these hydrogens are now up here and we have the sufficient concentration gradient it wants to leave. It's going to leave through this ATP synthase. And as these hydrogens are pumped out, it's going to manufacture more and more ATP. And this actually generates most of the ATP in cellular respiration, is this last step right here. Okay, so that's how the electron transport chain works, and that completes our talk about the parts of cellular respiration. So just as a quick review, our three stages: first was glycolysis, then the Krebs cycle, and then the electron transport chain. In glycolysis, we start with glucose and that ATP, and we're going to form this pyruvic acid, okay, and we're going to make this NADH, which is an electron carrier, and then we generate ATP. So even though we're using a little bit here, we generate a little bit more. So the net result is a positive ATP, and remember, this happens in the cytoplasm. The next step was the Krebs cycle, and in the Krebs cycle, we added to this pyruvic acid some acetic acid, okay? And what we got out of that were a few more electron transport molecules, NADH and FADH2. We generated carbon dioxide, and we made a little bit more ATP. And remember that the Krebs cycle happens in the matrix, or the fluid part of the mitochondria. And then finally, the last step in the cellular respiration is the electron transport chain. And this is where we're taking our electron transport molecules that we've generated from up above, and we are going to make a whole bunch of ATP. And this happens in the mitochondrial membrane. So that's all I have for you, just a real quick overview. The lessons, as always, will go into it in a little more detail. Good luck on the lessons, and we'll see you in the next video.